Welcome everyone to the Board of Commissioners meeting, June 3, 2024. Call this meeting to order. And we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Harrison.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda.
Mayor, I have an item to pull out of consent, and that would be under Finance, number 3, the budget amendment request. And then I would like to add a closed session for personnel discussion as allowed by General Statute 143-18.11A6.
Mayor, I would also like to add, we have a youth group in here, football coach team, that I would like to add on to the agenda to present a little information about them, the Vikings in the house tonight.
Okay, those items will go under C.
I'm sorry, what, sir?
Those items will go under
C?
C.
C, okay.
Any other items? We have a motion. Is there a second?
We don't have a motion.
Do we have a motion?
So moved as amended.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Just for a point of clarification, Mayor, the Vikings will be under new business C number 4?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
The budget will be number 3.
No, sir, that would be new business C, item 3, after the bond order.
For contract services, that the one that I pulled off of
Yeah.
consent.
They
Okay.
would both be under that section right there.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
Okay, approval of the agenda. Public comment. We now have a public comment. This is for anyone that does not want to speak about the budget. And I think we had some folks signed up, the ones signed up.
You should have this sheet there. Is that you guys?
Okay. This
Tracy, did
this
you
is
sign
not
up?
budget items, right?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We have, y'all have to help me with these names. Alea Smith? See? Get to the podium right here. They gave me wrong information. It's not my fault.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Isla Smith, and I have been a resident in Zebulon since I purchased my first home in May of 2021. It was a sweet victory as a single mother. We migrated from the north side of Raleigh, where I have lived for over 20 years. I stand in front of you today to plead and stress the importance of loving where you live. I am proud of the progress that Zebulon has made with new developments of homes and businesses, the festivals, concerts, and youth sporting games that bring our town together are fun and amazing. The town staff are involved and seem to care about its citizens. That brings me to this. While Zebulon has made some progress, the town surely has more work to do. Some of this work involves getting the owners of the Zebulon shopping centers on board to care about our town and our citizens as much as we do. As citizens, we appreciate having nicer establishments to shop and dine. Recently, I was receiving service at the nail salon in the Wedgwood Terrace Shopping Center, and for the first time while I was sitting there, I was able to realize the filth and unsanitary conditions on the outside of the building. I was disappointed at the up-close appearance and immediately became disgusted. The stained walls, the ground consisting of trash, the weeds growing out of the concrete parking lot, sidewalks and walkways, the black growth that's growing in many of the corners of the building are just unacceptable. It's sickening to see. At night, the parking lot is dark, unsafe, and consists of so many potholes I lost count. The business names on the buildings that have missing letters or broken parts and lights are just a complete eyesore. It also contributes to the less appealing appearance of the shopping center even more. They do not deserve our money under these conditions. As citizens of Zebulon, we should want to and be excited to spend our money in our community. The current conditions of our rundown, unkept, filthy, and old shopping centers only makes me want to shop elsewhere, and I am positive I am not the only one. With the number of families of all racial backgrounds moving into the Zebulon area and growing its population and its income, deserve to live in a place that we love to call home. A place we can take family who are visiting from out of town to shop, dine, and relax. That work is also getting our local schools up to par. Walking into Zebulon Middle School gives the sense that I'm walking into Eastside High. Most of you know the movie, based on the true story called Lean on Me, starring Morgan Freeman as a principal back in the 80s that transformed a predominantly black school for the good in Paterson, New Jersey. It too was old, run down, and full of indisciplined children, as well as overworked, fed-up staff. We have a beautiful tuition-free charter school here in Zebulon that lacks a balance and diversity. And it is impossible to get in unless you have someone on the inside, it seems. But I'm not here to talk about race or even use that as a factor of why the schools are so different. I am only pointing out the mere fact that two schools within minutes of each other are on two different ends of the spectrum, completely different worlds. It paints a picture, doesn't it? Just think about how more engaged the students and staff will be at Zebulon Middle School if they too can have nicer classrooms, bathroom facilities, gyms, auditoriums, and cafeterias. It is not easy to stand in front of you and my fellow citizens to address topics of concern. Please don't let this plea or the nerve that it took for me to stand here to speak with you today be in vain. We ask that you hold these shopping center owners accountable and do all that you can to see it through. Make them respect our community and our citizens. Get these centers clean and upkept. Also, don't forget about our children, the teachers and the staff at Zebulon Middle School. They too deserve a better looking place to learn, to teach, and to work. A place they can also be proud of. Thank you for listening.
Excuse me, I didn't get your address, I'm sorry.
It's on the paper.
A bit for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, my address is 533 Oak Holly Lane.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Next for public comment, we have Milton Robinson.
Sir.
This one. The name and address, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Milton Robinson. I reside at 336 Rustling Way, Zebulon, North Carolina. I've been a resident of Zebulon for about 3 years. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to ask and beg the committee for support for our youth. Right now, in our growing town, we have nothing dedicated to the youth for involvement except for the Boys and Girls Club. Now, the entity was great at its inception, but Zebulon is growing at twice its rate as it was when it was built. Currently, our youth have to go to bordering towns for engagement, and if their parents don't have any transportation, they don't even get to participate in those events. We as a town are behind in grabbing our youth. My question is, what is the plan? How do we as a governing body plan to rectify this? Summertime is upon us and we have nothing in place for our youth. If we don't do something to get them now, we will regret it later. They will fall into the influence of gang activities and other negative activities. We used to say the idle mind is the devil's playground. Well, the idle mind to these kids is whatever they come up with. And if we as adults don't strive to do something to solve the problem, then we're just adding to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Brooke Evans. Name and address.
My name is Brooke Evans, and I live at 57 Tracker Court, Garner, North Carolina. Throughout elementary and middle school, I was often bullied. And then in high school, I became a victim of cyberbullying. I had never been experienced in this world before, so it opened up a whole different door that I didn't know how to handle and I didn't know how to cope with. Eventually, I started to compete in my high school pageants. I wanted to gain my self-control and my self-love back. Eventually, I started to compete in the Miss America organization, where I came up with my community service initiative, Pull the Plug on Cyberbullying, in hopes of encouraging my peers to lift one another up instead of tearing each other down. I even created my own online social media campaign called #ClickWithKindness, with hopes to promote positivity online. I hope for each and every one of your support when I go compete for Miss North Carolina starting on June 26th. It will be available for live stream, and I cannot wait to compete with all the other amazing women who represent the areas of North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Kaden Brown.
Am I good?
Name and address.
Kaden Brown, 230 Taylor's Chapel Road, Dunn, North Carolina. Okay. So I am a rising senior in my high school. Growing up, I've loved school, and I've been heavily involved in my academics. Because of that, I have grown to love STEM. I love all things science and math. But growing up in the classroom, I always wanted more. I wanted a more hands-on experience. And it wasn't until I transferred high schools that I was able to have that experience. Because of that, I realized the gap in my education along with the gap in the STEM field. With that, I created my community service initiative, STEM Style. It's bridging the gap between men and women in the STEM field by encouraging our next generation of STEM innovators by giving them those hands-on experiences. Because of that, I have become an advocate for the Science Olympiad organization, an organization that provides kids those hands-on experiences to compete and just kind of see where they love STEM the most. With that, I have been able to work closely with Representative James Roberson. We are actually right now working on a bill that will be passed, looked at in January in the General Assembly, to have the Science Olympiad organization in every K-12 school in North Carolina, because I believe that this gap in education is one that needs to be looked at, as well as the STEM field, and that every child should have the right to a good STEM education. Thank you.
Thank you. That was everyone that had signed up for public comment that does not concern the budget. Did we miss anyone? Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
That's already been.
Done? Okay.
I apologize, we have not. You approved the agenda.
Yeah, we approved the agenda.
Yeah, so sorry.
Motion to approve the consent as amended.
Second.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. Budget hearing presentation, Manager Moore.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. Tonight, I present to the public the budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025, and then open it up for public comment. Give you a brief outline, but before I get into that, this is going to be a pretty lengthy presentation. There's going to be a lot of complex items to unpack here. So just as a heads up, when I get through the budget message, goals and features, there'll be an opportunity for a break, as well as the other breaks after revenue neutral, fund balance, and the potential budget modifications that the board discussed at their work sessions. The other thing is, while we will be unpacking a lot of information, if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you and we'll answer it as we go. But I will have some formal stops along the way as well. So as statutorily required, I'll review the statutory requirements of adopting the budget process or the budget. We'll quickly review the schedule and the process associated with that. And then related to Zebulon's budget proposed for 24-26, the goals and the features and the changes from fiscal year 24. I put those in quotes because those are requirements in the general statutes. Also because the county did a reappraisal of property this year. Also, as required in the statutes, I need to report to you the revenue neutral tax rate statement, so that's why that's in quotes. Fund balance, I think it's a good thing to review every year, but particularly for a lot of the capital costs, we've got something for you to be mindful of and how it might be impacted by the potential budget modifications that you'd like to consider to the recommended budget. So as far as statutory requirements, I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. You've seen it before, but there is a general statute that oversees the schedule with that. The big dates for that are before April 30th. Internally, we need to have our budget done. We met those deadlines. Not later than June 1st, budget and budget message has to be submitted to the governing board. That was done on May 9th. Before a budget ordinance can be adopted, you have to have a public hearing. We're having that tonight. And then not later than July 1st, a budget ordinance needs to be adopted. Review of the schedule. There's been quite a few work sessions. So there was a work session when the budget message was submitted on May 9th. There was budget sessions on the subsequent weeks, 2, 3, and then a fourth one was added on May 30th. And again, we are here for the budget hearing, public hearing tonight. And then the board has the ability to adopt the budget ordinance tonight, but must adopt it by June 30th. As far as what is the budget based upon, the goals and features, everything that's in that budget comes down from the goals within the strategic plan. So the strategic plan, the 2030 strategic plan, it's a year-long effort, community engagement involved. And from that, subsequent plans came from that. The comprehensive land use plan, comprehensive transportation plan, Parks and Rec master plan being examples. Those latter plans have the actual implementation, the plans to put in place that satisfy the goals of the Zebulon 2030 strategic plan. Within your FY25 budget that's been put before you, I'll visit the 3 focus areas, the first being vibrant downtown. The goals of that focus area is to revitalize the downtown and to get people downtown, not only attract them as visitors, but ultimately get them down there to live as well. A couple of big hurdles associated with achieving those goals. The cost of redeveloping those properties is quite large for a couple of reasons. A lot of those buildings have been neglected for a long time. And so to bring them up to current housing and building and fire and accessibility codes, it's quite expensive. Also, the utilities serving those buildings, particularly the sewer, is dilapidated, it's undersized, and for some of the types of uses, particularly restaurants, they don't serve well to process and pull away that type of waste. There's also not public space downtown, so that becomes problematic when you're trying to put on a parade or even just a special event. The town wasn't laid out that way. So in the budget put before you, there are things that are funded or recommended for funding to overcome that. So again, you have a robust amount of special events. A couple of examples you can see on the right hand of the screen there. Rock the Block being an example. Candy Cane Lane is another example. We will continue the facade grant program. So again, on the right, you see one of our recipients of the facade grant program, Old Raleigh Distillery. That program continues to be popular, but it is also approaching diminishing returns, meaning that the cost to fix up those buildings is becoming more and more complex, particularly with the utilities underground. So this budget has included in it an assessment of the sewer infrastructure running through the downtown area. And then finally, the board authorized moving forward with conducting a feasibility study for the Main Street district. So an example of what the boundary of that district could be is in the lower left. So the funds to actually do that feasibility study, which in essence is a way to tax downtown properties. The revenue generated from that tax of the downtown properties is to go back into that district, and it can be for a whole host of programs. It could be for the sewer rehabilitation, it could be for special events, it could be for facade grants, it could be for creating more public areas. In the growing smart focus area, the goals within the strategic plan is that the roads need to support your changing land use. So the roads were effective for farming. As those farms become residential neighborhoods, the roads need to change. And so there's features in this budget that reflect that. Also facilities, community center being an example of that. Parks also being an example of that as they get more residential use. Those facilities need to be upgraded as well. And then to meet the needs of the growing population, this budget includes appropriate staffing, not only in the number of staff, but in the compensation for the expertise of some of the staffing that we need. Hurdles are, well, we are already growing exponentially. You see the top left, while that's not quite an exponential curve, it's getting rather close. We've also had quite a bit of deferred expenses, and I'll talk about that when I get into the revenue neutral tax rate. So we're playing catch up at the very same time that we're growing rapidly, which is quite two hurdles to overcome at the same time. This budget continues to fund transportation projects. So you see on the upper right the functional designs of the intersection improvement at Old Bun and Shepherd School. If you have a bond referendum that successfully passes, you will also begin the construction of North of Rendell, the first phase of North of Rendell as well. So this budget includes projects like this. Also, you are expanding transportation, and for the first time ever, you have funds in there to fund transit service within the town of Zebulon. Your parks are getting a lot more use, and so there are funds in here to get those facilities upgraded, examples being the walking track at Zebulon Elementary School, replacing the flooring at the community center. You can see we've got a damaged bridge down there on the lower right as one of the pedestrian bridges crossing into the community park. And then, as I mentioned, this budget includes staffing to increase the number of employees to address the service demand, as well as market conditions. As far as the service demand, the positions that are being added to address the additional needs, I talked about this when the budget was presented, but for the benefit of those watching or in the audience, I'll go through a quick summary and reason behind these additional positions. So in the police department, the addition of 2 watch commanders, this provides additional staffing to shift work, particularly for those staff when they are out on the night shifts. So this has more supervisory as well as work capacity adding to those shifts. Detective is also to not only handle the additional workload that's coming through the detective divisions to close out those cases more quickly, but as you heard from the chief, to initiate that We Care program where we have social workers attend and then follow up on domestic cases rather than just leaving the scene after we're done with the case. Fire department, this includes our portion of the 3 firefighters. We need 6 firefighters, but Wake County has picked up the cost for 3 of those firefighters in this coming fiscal year through their Career in a Year program. We'll pick up the cost for those 3 additional firefighters next year, but for the first 3, we're picking up the cost this year. Fire department, as we see a department growing and we see a chief and an assistant chief spending respectively 35 to 70% of their time in admin duties like payroll, like timesheets. We need to free up time for the chief and the assistant chief to focus on their primary jobs, particularly with the chief taking a more active role in coordinating with both Wake County and USDA on the administration of the grants associated with the design and the construction of the fire EMS station. Public Works, we currently have 1 capital project manager, as this budget and previous budgets have funded the design of capital projects. As those capital projects move into the construction phase, we need additional help to assist in that area. Stormwater manager, we, through the state of North Carolina, are permitted to oversee the maintenance of our stormwater system. We're also charged with monitoring the water quality of the water that goes in and comes out of that stormwater system. We have been underfunded in that area for several years, and the state of North Carolina has notified us of that we've received a notice of deficiency. So this is an effort to have more focused oversight of that program by hiring a stormwater manager. Transportation Planner 2 is a reflection of the complexity of the site plans that we see coming into the town, particularly those related to traffic impacts, roadway widenings that are associated with development. So this is an effort to get some more expertise within our planning department. Both the Stormwater Manager and the Transportation Planner 2 were anticipated to be something covered by the engineer. The marketplace for engineering is very competitive right now. We were unsuccessful in securing an engineer. So one thing that has changed from last year to this fiscal year is that the engineer position is coming out of the budget, and that in part is helping to fund the Stormwater Manager and the Transportation Planner 2 that's in this fiscal year. Moving to the right hand of the screen in Parks and Rec, much like you saw last year with your athletics, getting increased attendance. You're also getting increase in attendance in the number and the type of programming that's being requested by your citizens. And so this is the addition of a program coordinator, just like we recommended last year to have an athletic coordinator. We're also getting higher use not only of your park facilities, but of your facilities themselves, restroom being the primary example, but also the community center being another example, where contracted services is just not keeping up with the workload of the parks that we have, just the routine usage, but to say nothing of when we have things like tournament ball come through there and really maximize the use of our parks. So those 2 positions, both park maintenance technician and the facility maintenance technician, is a way to get at that increased workload of both our parks and our facilities. Budget analyst is a way to really help us to prepare for the future, especially as we get ready for a $20 million transportation bond. And you could see a $38 million Parks and Recreation bond for under consideration for this time next year, as well as tax increases associated with Fire Station 2 construction and down the road Fire Station 3. So having someone that can dedicate more time, get a better feel on what our projected expenditures are, as well as our projected revenue streams, will be very helpful to position us in the most favorable way for those pending bond referendums. The admin assistant is something that we offered for the board to consider to assist the board, particularly in their travel and training needs and other supply orders or anything like that. We're seeing a heavier workload in our human resources department as they try to straddle and provide clerk duties. And so this was just offered as a way to bridge the gap until a clerk is hired. And then I'll talk about market adjustments next. So these positions that I've listed are for our new positions. Market adjustments are related to existing positions that we've got. So you've seen this diagram a couple of times. This was presented to you at one of your spring work sessions. I want to say your January work session. And if you take a look at these circles over here, you'll see there are 4 vacant police officer positions. And so what the police chief offered was to increase the starting salary of those positions up to $52,500, which is what this approximation is. That increase introduces as well as reveals problems within the organization. And this increase to $52,500 is not in the recommended budget, and I will share with you why and also give you details about what is put into the budget. So as an example, if we were to increase the starting position of police officers to $52,500, that introduces one problem, and it's compression. So what happens is you have new officers come in and they are making more than an existing officer who is an officer first class. So an officer first class, that's someone who is progressing on their way up the career ladder. They have experience, they've completed certain responsibilities, they've gone through accreditation, and so they've gotten a bump in pay. And so in order to resolve that compression issue, where you have newly minted officers not making more than an officer first class, you have to make adjustments and bump that all the way through the department. So this is a graph to show you what kind of adjustments would have to be made by making that adjustment at the entry level, how it matriculates throughout the entire department. It goes all the way up to captain position. So that's one of the problems that gets introduced. And then one of the problems that gets revealed is at the most extreme, when you get to the department director position, is you have compression introduced by the changes made in the police department. Before I explain what the compression looks like and how the changes in the police department affect department directors as well as other departments, let me spend some time explaining this graph. So these are bars showing the low end of the market for different department director positions. So the low end shows what the base pay is for a market position. The high end shows the higher end for a market position. The yellow is a reflection of what individuals within those particular areas are actually, I'm sorry, the blue, it shows what the people in those positions are currently paying. So one of the things that gets introduced when you make the bump to the police officer and you matriculate all those changes throughout the organization, you have a situation where that police captain that I showed you on the previous slide bumps up to there. And so not only you have a police captain making more than some of the department director positions, when you make that change up, you have a police captain making more than a majority of the department directors, which reveals a couple of problems. First is conditions with the department directors, but also conditions with the department directors also means that you've got some inequities that are occurring with other departments as well. So if you elevate just the police department, you're not only creating inequities with the department directors, but you have inequities occurring between different departments. The other thing that occurs is if you try to adjust these pays, you run into a ceiling issue right here with the manager position. Manager position is going to limit how much latitude that you've got to provide to those other positions. So for all of those reasons, what is included in the FY24 budget is something that is not a solution, but it's a way to buy time until we do a comprehensive market study. And that is to, across the board, offer all employees a 3% increase. In addition to that, what that will allow is for some of these other positions, not only in the police department, time for them to get elevated pay through career ladders and provide some greater separation here. So in that particular case, it provides someone, in this example, the police chief, the latitude to hire at a higher salary. We've incorporated as much as a 5% increase for these starting salaries. By the time the 3% gets addressed to the other employees, it probably gives a lot more latitude. The amount of change that's shown here is a 15% change. So I will share with you later, if you are interested in giving a 15% increase to the police officers, what a 15% increase looks like through the entire organization. Another example to talk about market conditions is the planning department offers a good example. Planning positions are very competitive in this area because you are in a growth region, so there's a lot of demand for planners. Also, they tend to be highly specialized. They tend to require a higher degree of education requirements and accreditation. And so what we've been seeing over the past 4 years, when it comes time to recruiting strongly from universities. We're also recruiting strongly from counties. Counties is a little bit different planning approach. When you are planning in a county, you're looking to preserve land. You're looking to protect the land that's there. Typically, it's agricultural land that you're trying to bring in or keep under protection. City land or town planning is much different. You're talking about how to convert that land into a new development. And so what we've seen over the past 4 years is we have a lot of students come in to join us. Relatively speaking, I think it's a reflection of our competitive pay if you're a student. We're also able to bring in people from the county. And then when they come here and they get some experience and they've gotten greater skills when it comes to city planning, they depart for other cities. In some cases, they go work for counties, but that's to take a higher supervisory role. So we're seeing market conditions affect us in planning, as an example, on both the recruiting and the retention front. All right, moving on to the last focus area of the strategic plan, small town life. The goals of that is to increase walkability, and that's very much a physical connection, like connecting neighborhoods to commercial areas, connecting neighborhoods to recreational areas, connecting neighborhoods to each other. There's a lot of gaps throughout town where communities are segmented off of each other, so the increased walkability is to make those physical connections through sidewalks, through greenways being examples of that. The increased connectedness is to actually bring people together. You are growing at a very quick pace. There was a time when everyone was born and raised here and knew each other, but you had a lot of people coming in. And as a way to build that social capital, by getting people to network, programming is an effective way to bring people together. So the hurdles of that is the physical gaps, the physical segmentations of neighborhoods to each other and to services, but also people just joining the community and not necessarily knowing who their neighbor is or how to fit in and participate in the community. So this budget continues and amps up the more formal civic engagement opportunities. So the top right is an example of the police academy. We will continue to have a Citizens Academy and augment that with other programs like Fire Academy. Athletics and programming is also another way. We saw a notable increase in athletics, and as reason for the programming coordinator, we're seeing a very heightened attendance in not only the programming that we have, but a demand for different types of programming. Little River Park, the continuation of the design and then moving into construction, that will be a physical place that can bring people together. And as we've shared with the board, the amount of land available is quickly being consumed. This would be the time to start acquiring and securing property for future parks. And so funds to do that is included in the FY25 budget as well. As required by the statutes, I need to share with you changes in both the revenue and expenditures, so I'll go through that relatively quickly before I take my first formal break. But you can see the differences in the amount of revenue between the property tax that was coming in last year compared to the property tax that's coming in this year. Property tax rate remains the same. It is different than the revenue neutral tax rate, and I'll walk you through the statement for that. You see marginal increases in sales tax. I think that's revealing. You're not going to the way the sales tax code looks. You're not going to garner a lot of money from sales tax by sales that occur within the town of Zebulon. You do best when places like Raleigh and Cary do best because they share with you their tax revenue. Restricted tax, examples of that is like the gas tax. That's something that comes to you from the state of North Carolina when someone pumps gas. The state sends you money. It's restricted because it has to be used for a particular purpose, and that's for roads. Sales and service, that's just a reflection of services that you provide and people pay for. And then your fund balance, which is your savings account, how much you're drawing down on that. So those are the changes in the revenue. As far as the changes in expenditures, you've got a budget now of $28.5 million, reflective of increases in the operating budget of 18.8. So that's a reflection of those positions as an example, as well as the changing to market conditions. You have a few more capital projects underway, the road projects that I mentioned, so that increased the amount of expenditures on capital. You're not taking on any additional debt, but you could if the bond referendum, if you move forward with the bond referendum, and there is a bond referendum on the ballot in November and it passes, but you would not start paying on that until FY26. So that's my first break, and so I'll pause to see if there's any questions or comments.
Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none.
Okay, as statutorily required, I need to proclaim, or you all need to list the revenue neutral tax rate. So I wanted to give you a couple of primers. First of all, the statement, not the rate, is statutorily required. So you're required to tell your community what the statement is, but you don't have to adopt that rate. Statutory equation assumes that your property tax revenue grows positively. So they've developed an equation. The equation works assuming that your tax base grows. Yours does not. Yours varies quite a bit, influenced very heavily by GSK and BB&T. It also assumes that the initial revenue that you had or the tax rate that you were charging was sufficient to support the services. It was not. I'll go back and I'll talk about how the tax rate was kept artificially low, and as a result of that, you had deferred expenses, and so the initial revenue or the initial tax rate was not sufficient to provide the services that your community needs, much less the growing community needs. At the end of the day, you'll set the tax rate that Zebulon needs. They'll be to address the goals and the projects that are listed in your strategic plans and your master plans and your comprehensive plans. You'll need to understand, while it's easy to try to compare yourself with your neighbors, particularly in Wake County, understand that your tax base is exceptionally different, so exceptionally that of the approximately 550 municipalities, there's probably maybe 5 that have a tax rate that's similar to yours, meaning a heavy reliance on a few taxpayers that have a high volume of personal property tax revenue. At the end of the day, you'll need to adopt the tax rate based upon the support that your citizens need. So on that first assumption that property tax revenue grows positively, it doesn't, so I'll give you a quick overview of that. So real properties are land and buildings. Land and buildings get taxed, and the tax assessor comes out at least once every 8 years. In Wake County, they've started to go out every 4 years. But when they come out, they take a look at properties, and they take a look at land, and they value that property. And that town at that time knows what their tax value is, and they know that that tax value is not going to change for another 4 to 8 years until the appraiser goes back out. And when the appraiser does go back out, it's usually to increase tax values. New neighborhoods have come online, people have added to their property, maybe someone has put even an existing property, someone's put in a mother-in-law house in the back. The tax assessor will note that, increase the property tax rate. Personal properties are a different matter. Personal properties are equipment, vehicles. They get valued every year. So the tax assessor comes out once a year to places like GSK, BB&T, takes a look at the equipment they have, the big servers they've got, the big production line robotics that they have, even their vehicles, and those get revalued every single year. So if you have a property tax base that's based a lot on personal property, that's something that could change every year. And if it is property that depreciates over time, some of them, it can go down negatively rather quickly. So you have a business within Zebulon that has very expensive equipment that depreciates at 20% a year. So within 5 years, it can depreciate to nothing. And you've actually experienced that this year with one of your businesses has seen a 20% decline in their depreciation. And that's affected your personal property tax base. So if your community's tax base has a significant amount of personal properties, Zebulon, your property tax revenue fluctuates every year and dramatically, kind of like that. So between 2009 and 2010, the value of the tax base increased by $27 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but when you apply the tax rate to it, that produced about $84,000. That's not enough money to even buy one police cruiser. So you can imagine back in 2009, 2010, department directors were told that they had to find how they were going to divide $84,000 8 ways. And then in 2010, 2011, that tax rate then started to decline. So there was a reduction of $27 million. And the year after that, there was a reduction of an additional $30 million. And then after that, there was a reduction of an additional $22 million. It wasn't until 2013, 2014 did you start to see some recovery in the tax base. And it wasn't until 2016 had the tax base recovered enough to produce the equivalent amount of revenue that you saw in 2009. So you saw an organization between 2009 and 2016 that was doing and operating services at a diminished capacity, and that's going to go into that market changes that I talked about earlier. So to that continuing to that assumption that the original tax rate was sufficient, there's a few things on this graph, and so if you look at this blue line, that is the tax value that was shown there. It's just shown on a different scale, so it looks different, but that's what that is. And what Zebulon did is, as this started to slow down and then decline, they adopted a tax rate that actually went down in their tax rate. So if you are to experience something like this as your manager, I will not recommend, while you're going through a decline, to reduce your property tax rate. You have one of two options. You can increase the property tax rate, or you can cut back on your services. And the town did neither. And so what that did was that produced a gap where we continue to provide service at the same level, but we were not increasing the property tax rate to cover the reduction in the property tax value. And so that produced a gap, and that's this gap right here. The tax rate that we are charging in 2015 compared to what we should have been charging is an 11 cents gap. And so when I share with you that the equation is flawed because it assumes the original tax rate was sufficient, is because in Zebulon's case, they did not charge a sufficient tax rate. There was an 11-cent gap. And that will figure into the difference on why I've recommended the tax rate that I have and what the revenue neutral tax statement is. Give you a little bit further breakdown about how that reduction in both property tax value as well as a reduction in the property tax rate affected the town services. So between 2009 and 2010, that's that $84,000. That's the less than what it cost to buy a police cruiser. And then after that were subsequent reductions. So you had departments now, organization-wide, a reduction of $138,000 off the table. The year after that, another 138 plus an additional 149. The year after that, still down that 138, that 149, and now down 17,000. In 2013, 2014, fortunes started to switch around. You gained 180,000, but you still were a deficit of 304. And again, it wasn't until 2016 that the revenue was even to what it was in 2009. So, how do you keep up appearances with an 11-cent gap? Also known less affectionately to those that worked here during that time about doing more with less. I've given 3 examples which are exemplary of things that are going on. So we stopped paving. That's an example of not tending to your infrastructure. So when we have problems downtown because our sewer lines are old, our sewer lines can't handle the amount of waste that's coming from, in a particular case, restaurants. You need different type of sewer lines, but also you need them up to date. Stopping the paving was an example of how we stopped tending to our infrastructure. And we've seen that manifested in what the state of North Carolina is telling us with the notice of deficiency. We also walked away from our downtown. So we had buildings begin to physically collapse in on themselves, and some buildings disappeared. We also saw less valuable uses of those buildings, and so when you have downtowns that are not being promoted and they're not accessible, having adequate streetscapes as an example, the tenants that go into those buildings start to tend towards more vice activity, and we're seeing more and more vice activity in those downtown buildings. Not a lot of sales tax generation, and because the buildings were in decline, the value of those properties were depreciating, and so we were seeing less property tax revenue as well. And the last big example of how we kept up appearances with that 11-cent gap is we devalued people. And we devalued people because we capped their pay. We didn't keep up with the market. We also asked them to wear several hats. And then when we came out of this and started growing quickly, we had people that were not at market pay and were already carrying too many different job responsibilities. So how this affected the town was, so the top right or the 2 top pictures I think are success stories, but that's an example of what some of the buildings looked like in 2015. We started investing more in the downtown area. The FY25 budget continues to do that. This actually was ground zero of the resurgence of downtown. So this is Brian Bullock's building. He was the first to take advantage of the facade grant. He was able to rescue that building and stop it from deteriorating. And so we got increased property tax revenue from it. But he also moved into those places some sales tax generators as well. So we got some increased sales tax revenue. And that really is what the secret of downtown revitalization is, which is to preserve and protect your building product so they can get increased in value and produce more property tax revenue and get tenants in there that will drive up your sales tax revenue and provide services that the community is looking for. Restaurants being an example, coffee shops being another example. On the bottom part, it's a more quantitative explanation of what deferred maintenance looks like when it comes to not investing in your infrastructure. In this case, the streets. This had put us on a place that we were heading towards a bankruptcy. When you see this on the bottom left, this is what's called a pavement condition curve, and the longer you go without resurfacing streets, it becomes more expensive to maintain those. And so as we were seeing over time, we were seeing more and more of these streets in the red bars, showing we had more and more streets getting into this higher level of repair and replacements that was needed because they were not being maintained. And that was slowly going to bankrupt us as we continue to have to pay higher and higher maintenance costs. So thankfully we were getting ahead of that. But one of the things that we need to continue addressing is the market conditions on the personnel that I've mentioned earlier. All right, and then the last thing is on the revenue neutral tax rate. I'll walk you through how that's calculated to show you the other deficiency in the statute's equation. So this is a graph showing your property tax value. The numbers on the left are, so this is $1,367 million, or a better way to say that, that's $1.3 billion. That's the amount of land and buildings and equipment and vehicles that you have in the town in 2021. In 2022, you had $1.5 billion. In 2023, you had $1.7 billion. In 2024, you had $1.89 million. And so what the statutes tell you to do is take a look at the value of each of those years, come up with the percent increase for each of those years, and average them. So the change from 21 to 22 was a 9.7% increase, 22 to 23 was an 18.8, 23 to 24 was a 2.6, the average of those is 10.4. Now, while that seems to be impressive, if I were to talk to Chris Ray and say, do you think you've added 10% of streets per year? I think he would say that that's a light number. I think if I were to go to Mike Clark and say, is this a reflection of the amount of development plans that you've seen? Or to a Sheila Long and talk about athletics or programming participation. This is going to come across as a, relatively speaking, a low-end number, and I'll explain why it is a low-end number in a minute. So moving on, the state asks you to then take that last valuation right there and multiply it by that percent right there. And what the state says is, well, this is what the revenue that you are going to make in the coming year. And then they say, all right, take that value times your tax rate, and that's how much revenue you would be bringing in. And then the last thing that the state tells you to do is take that revenue and divide it by the new value of all the buildings and land and equipment and vehicles in the town of Zebulon, and that's your tax revenue neutral rate. So I've just provided that statement. Your revenue neutral tax rate is 45.4 cents. And now I'm going to tell you the other reason that equation is flawed. That's a more reflective example of how you are growing. When I take out things like, as an example, one of your businesses that you rely very heavily on for personal property tax revenue can decrease and depreciate their equipment by 20% if they're not constantly replacing that. That occurred this year. And that's why, even though you were growing a lot with residential properties, because you have such a big demand and reliance upon that one company, and they had a 20% depreciation, that flattened out that curve. Down here, you had a flatter curve than, again, the growth that you were seeing. So you have another business that's very reliant upon producing patented medicines. And when those patents expire and those medicines become generic drugs, there's no longer a profit margin associated with that. And so hopefully they transition to another medicine, or they shut down an assembly line. And that's another example of being reliant on another business that can dramatically change the amount of tax revenue that they are sharing with you. And so when I take out those drops for those two scenarios that I talk about, you get something that's along the lines of 13.1%. I think I could scrub it even more and get higher, but when you take into account that your tax rate is pulled up and down very dramatically year after year, and when you scrub that out, your average annual percent increase was 13.1%. And so when I put that into the equation, your revenue neutral tax rate is 46.6. So to summarize, again, the statement, not the rate, is statutorily required. You provided that, so you don't need to do any more. Statutory equation produces 45.4 cents by assuming that the property value growth is a positive constant. It isn't. And so when I showed you that equation that really accounts for how you grow and contract year after year, I added 1.2 cents to that. And then to get to that notion that we were 11 cents short by not addressing the tax rate as the property tax value was decreasing, added an 11 cents. So adding the property tax revenue to the property tax revenue neutral rate of 45.4 of the 1.2 plus the 11 got to 57.6 cents. The tax rate that is recommended to you in the FY25 budget is 57.5, so a tenth of a cent short of that. Again, it's the tax rate that we put forth for your consideration that focuses on your strategic goals and projects. It's also put forth understanding your tax base is exceptionally different. It's out there to support what your citizens need based upon what our frontline staff is telling us, whether that's police or fire or Parks and Rec or Public Works. And it's also to support the employees both in number and rate to meet what those citizens' needs are. So I'll pause again to see if there's any questions.
Questions, comments from the board?
None at this time, sir.
Hearing none, proceed.
This is not statutorily required, but fund balance plays a very important part in Zebulon's bond rating, which is going to play an important part if you do move forward with a bond referendum as far as your credit rating and what the interest rates are that you're going to pay on that. It also plays a part in the solvency of the town. You are heavily reliant on a couple of businesses, and should they shut down or relocate or get merged with someone else, you need to have some capital on hand to keep providing services at the level of service, and I'll get into what that is. So fund balance is a fancy way of saying that you have different savings accounts. You have funds that are restricted, you have funds that are committed, you have funds that are assigned, and you have funds that are unassigned. So restricted is that's money that you have left in your savings account that originally came with a specific purpose, and it can only be spent for that specific purpose. So I talked about the gas tax being an example. You get money from the state, you spend that money on street paving as an example. The project completes, it's under budget. It can only be spent on transportation projects, so it goes back into a restricted account. The money you get for Parks and Recreation impact fees, the money that you get from developers on transportation impact fees are other examples of money that goes into your restricted accounts. Committed, and the board has no authority to use the money for anything other than those purposes specified. The committed and the assigned and the unassigned, the board has complete authority to move around as they wish. So committed, an example of that is you had, let's say you completed a stormwater project and it came in under budget. You would move the savings of that into the stormwater reserve account. So the idea is to match it up with the type of project that it was intended for. You all have the authority to move fund balances from the committed to another area. So if there's savings in the stormwater reserve account and you want to use it for a fire vehicle, you can pull it out of committed and assign it to another purpose. Assigned means that, as an example, in FY24, we have committed capital funds to particular projects. Those projects may not have completed construction or may not have started construction, and so those funds are assigned for that particular project. If the project's already under construction, you have to complete it. But let's just say that you have a change in thought, and after the project's designed, you don't want to move forward with construction. You can take those assigned funds and you can move it to a different project. The unassigned is your savings account that has all of the latitude assigned to you. It's not assigned, it's not committed, it's certainly not restricted. It's just, it is savings there for you to assign as you best see fit. Again, the purposes, the two main purposes for fund balance that are most relevant to the town of Zebulon is they have an influence on the credit rating, the town's credit rating, and its solvency. And so I'll walk through what those are, but before that, let me give you a little better idea of how much money you've got in each of your different savings accounts. So the bar on the left reflects your total fund balance, and so that's composed of the restricted amount, the committed amount, the assigned amount, and unassigned amount. So all total, you've got close to $23.5 million in fund balance. Again, not all of that is available because some of it's restricted, some of it's committed, some of it's assigned. Of the amount of that is unassigned, you have $10.3 million. And you all have adopted as a policy that you're going to, hold on to at least 30% of the budget so that you can have reserve. And that reserve is important for a couple of reasons. It does influence your credit rating, and it does influence your solvency. So while you've got $10 million available, you have adopted as a policy for those two reasons that I mentioned to hold on, at least in the last audit, $6.6 million. As far as the bond rating, how your bond rating is determined, there's 4 factors. So your finance, how much fund balance do you have on hand, how much liquidity do you have as far as being able to dispense and let go of some items and pay off bills. The economy and the tax rate, what these bond companies are looking for is what's your tax value per capita, what's your median household income. Management, how well are you managing your revenues and expenditures? Are you living within your means, so to speak? And your debt, your pensions is how much debt are you carrying. Right now, we're doing really well in 3 categories. So on finances, management, debt, pension, depending upon the bond agency you're looking at, we rank between strong or very strong. On the economy and tax base, we are weak and weakening. And the reason that I say that, and also to connect some of the things you've heard from staff, is we've got to diversify our housing product. We continue to have a single type of housing product that brings the value of that housing product down by turning it into rental property. We're also not having higher end property that meets the needs of some of the executive housing that's being requested, but also by not having the higher end, we're not able to afford some of the lower end like the workforce and affordable housing. And we are also too reliant on a couple of main businesses. And so, but on the fund balance, we are doing the best we possibly can. So as long as you stay at your 30% policy, you're going to be getting the top marks in that category as far as your bond rating. There's an example, I think this might be from Moody's, but this is just an example of how they rank different municipalities. Again, as far as the fund balance is concerned, you're sitting in a very strong position. You can't possibly get more points in fund balance to help you with your bond rating. Those two bars that are cutting through the center of those graphs, or center of those bar graphs, the orange one is related to what the median is for what most cities throughout, or the average cities throughout the nation are holding on to. And in order to get a AAA rating, you have to have above the what's in the gray. So even though we have more than what is in the in that gray, we can't get any more credit related to fund balance because on our economy and our tax base, that's a weakened position for us. But anyway, that's the first purpose of the fund balance, is to preserve and protect your bond rating. As far as solvency, I mentioned there's a couple of businesses that we rely heavily upon. We gain a little over $1.6 million every year in personal property tax revenue from GSK, and we get 1.2 from BB&T Truist. So one of the other purposes of fund balance is just to provide and operate at a current level of service. So in effect, we need about $3 million on hand to operate for 1 year. So if we ever came into a doomsday scenario, we would operate for a year. We would look to scale back on services. We would look at reductions in force. We would look out to farm out services to other agencies, Highway Patrol being an example. We would close down community center as ways to reduce level of service. But if you want to maintain level of service, you need at least $3 million to replace that lost income. Per your fund balance policy, you can operate 2 years, 4 months under that scenario. And for the amount of unassigned fund balance you've got, you can operate close to 3.5 years. All right, before I get into the modifications that were introduced by the board at their work sessions, I'll take another pause.
I think we take a break at this point. 10-minute recess.
And to close out the presentation, as I mentioned, the board had 4 work sessions prior to tonight, and so we're going to illustrate some of those things that were brought up as discussion items by the board, let them have an idea of how that impacts the recommended budget.
Prior to that, Manager Moore, could you please explain how our tax base has changed through the years and how the breakdown of our business versus our rooftops now versus even 10 years ago has kind of changed the direction as far as the burden of the tax base, where that's coming from, and how we're a little bit more stable now than we were in the past?
We are a little bit more stable than we were in the past. GSK and BB&T don't command a majority of our tax base, but they still command 38% of the tax base. Are there any other questions from the board before I proceed? Things that board members introduced was to construct a splash pad at Whitley Park. So Whitley Park, 4.8 acres, so that's about in the range of a neighborhood park. At the time it was built, it probably was the community park, and so it has some features there that you probably would, or you would not see in a neighborhood park, but gives you a sense of scale of size. These are rough estimates. This is one of the things, again, that came up at a work session, so staff is developing this on the fly. We can get more accurate information by at least moving forward with a concept plan. Concept plan will illustrate a couple things. Most practically, can something like a splash pad even fit on Whitley Park? The other thing also practically related that can do is splash pads. They can be regional draws. The parking and the access to Whitley Park is through a neighborhood, and so a concept plan can help identify if some additional features like parking or even road improvements are required. So this is just a rough cost estimate. Again, a concept plan will help you get more accurate estimates. No, and I'll share this again, even if you construct the full amount, you will not go to construction within this coming fiscal year. Designs, they typically take around a year. One of the things is that takes time is not only the design process, but also having project managers to oversee that. So with limited staff that are overseeing other capital projects, in Parks and Rec's case, the track around Zebulon Elementary School, improvements and upgrades to the disc golf course, the community center flooring, the community park bridge, those can also impact the design schedule as well, unless those projects are delayed or paused. So I don't know that I've got much more to add to that, but I will pause to see if there's any questions or comments.
Questions, comments? Proceed.
All right, the board also expressed interest in installing bathrooms at Gill Street Park, a much smaller area, 1.6 acres. Talking to Sheila, this is probably classified today as a micro park. We already have in the FY25 budget to do some site planning that includes community engagement, so that $30,000 is already there. As far as the other costs, design, permitting, site remediation, construction, those really are big question marks for us. We've put for your consideration to add to the budget $500,000. I can't tell you right now if that's going to be adequate or not. I put it in there just simply as a placeholder for you to consider. Some things to keep in mind, unlike the concept plan for Whitley Park splash pad, this would take a little bit, this would take a higher level of effort. And I'll talk about the reasons behind that in just a minute. So while a park planner was requested in the FY25 budget, it was not budgeted. If you do move forward this, may need to consider expediting the funding for that so you can have dedicated project management of something like this, and I'll get into the reasons that are going to be the big drivers for that, which is has been shared with the community, and I'll use the pointer. The replacement of this playground was budgeted in the current fiscal year that we're in right now. And as we do when we acquire new property, or if we're going to be putting in foundations, as you would with playground equipment, we did a soil assessment. And some of the initial soil assessments came back with elevated lead counts that exceeded the EPA residential requirements. So out of caution and due diligence, we went ahead and recognizing that there was lead samples at the surface, we went ahead and moved forward and did soil sampling throughout the entire site, knowing that the board had an interest to consider bathrooms in the future. And what those results came back with preliminarily is on the west side of the property, as well as the north, and some in here in the interior, they were above the EPA standards acceptable to residential properties, which is the same criteria for parks. So while we sent the lab reports off to the soil samples off to the lab, we took the proactive step to go ahead and cordon off these areas. And if you've been out there, you'll see yellow tree protection fencing, just keeping people out of this area. Those results have come back and been confirmed. There are there's elevated lead counts on the surface in those areas. And so the town has 3 paths moving forward. One is to permanently cordon off that area. So an example would be to install fence around those areas, permanent fencing, so people can't get into those areas. Another example of an approach to that lead is to physically cap the area. Basketball courts, tennis courts, paved greenway trails are all examples of how you can cap areas like this and prevent the physical contact with lead. And then the last approach available to the town, much more expensive, is to remove it and replace it. And removing involves specialized contractors and disposal at specialized landfills that will receive this kind of waste. And so depending upon how the town moves forward, whether they want to permanently cordon it off, whether they want to cap it, whether they want to remove or replace it, that's going to have an impact in the site remediation costs as well as the construction costs. And so that's why those are question marks. Again, we've put for your consideration a placeholder of $500,000. Again, not knowing if that's sufficient, but it was just a way to try to respond to some interest that was expressed by the board. Again, I'll take any questions that the board might have.
Questions, comments on the board? Hearing none, proceed.
One of the other things that the board brought up was recently we installed sun shades at Community Park, so you can see an example of that on the right. And so we've come back with options for the board to consider. One is to raise the fence and put in extra screening. One is to apply custom screenings. I had thought when I looked at these pictures that these were enclosures, but these are just other examples of custom screening. So I wanted to make intentional for the board to know that we are not talking about enclosures. We want to maintain access and visibility and transparency into the dugout. So these are not, enclosure is not an option. This is another price tag example of $30,000. We're not sure that it's going to markedly improve the amount of shade, but this is a way to at least do a more detailed assessment. Again, take any questions that the board might have.
Questions, comments from the board? Hearing none, proceed.
And then back to what was brought up earlier. So if the board is interested in raising starting salary of police officers to $52,500, which is a 15% increase of what the starting salary is, there's going to be ramifications not only through that department, but all departments. The ultimate price tag for that is $650,000. There's also a request to add in additional police officer. That price tag is $105,000 by the time you include benefits and equipment and things like that. So that's shown highlighted as an additional position to what was put forth in the recommended budget. So going back to the changes, this is a change between what was recommended and the proposed modifications that the board is considering. So the expenditures are obviously going to increase. That's a reflection of the operating expenses that I just mentioned, with increasing everyone's salary as well as the additional police officer. And the capital increases reflecting the splash pad at Whitley Park, as well as the restrooms at Gill Street. Again, no new debt service. If you do move forward with the bond referendum and it does pass, that debt service would not begin until FY26. On the revenue side, you would increase the revenue for these operating expenses through your property tax by increasing the property tax rate by a little over 3 cents. Your sales tax restricted sales and service revenue is not expected to change. Your fund balance increases to 4.7, and then as we talked about earlier, that puts you below your floor for what we project to be your revenue and expenditures. So if you did move forward with Gill Street and Whitley Park, you need to either reduce the amount of money that you're asking for either one of those, or you need to take an equal valued project on the capital budget out in order to maintain your fund balance policy. So with that, that concludes staff's presentation. Staff recommends accepting public comment on the recommended budget as well as the proposed modifications.
Any questions, comments? Before we go into the public hearing, I'm going to ask that we hear from the Vikings. They can come up to the podium and speak so we can let you guys go.
Do we need to make a modification
Yes.
to the agenda?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I'd like to move to modify the agenda to allow the Vikings to speak now instead of where they are slotted in the agenda.
Have a motion, second.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Motion passed. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and the Board of Commissioners, Town of Zebulon, and everyone watching on YouTube. My name is Udo Jones. I am the Vice President of the Zebulon Vikings and Cheer nonprofit organization. We are led by our fearless leader, Tori Holland, who is our president, and Kira Staten, who is the treasurer and also the secretary. And then we have also 2 other board members who are Sam Boyston and DJ Bunn, who couldn't be here today. I guess I'll start with the where and why. So this started in North Carolina, where me, Tori Holland, Sam Boyston was all youth football coaches for the program. You know, one day we were just at practice, and I went to Tori, and I'm like, what happened to Zebulon? You know, what happened to Zebulon's football organization, their youth football organization? He's just like, man, I guess they just couldn't put up with it. It just didn't happen. And this was about 2 years ago. So last year of August, I went to Torrey again, and I'm like, why not Zebulon? We're looking at the foundation that Wendell built, and it's beautiful. They have their own field. The town is backing them. It's beautiful in Wendell. So we said, why? The same thing could happen in Zebulon. You know what I mean? And he said, you know what, why? I'm going to look into that. Come about the next practice, he's like, if I look into it, will you back me? And I said, of course, 110%. And, Sam got involved, DJ got involved, we got Kiera on board, and we're standing in front of you now, and we are honored. This was just something from the word of mouth, and as you can see, where we're at now, words are very important. Our vision for Zebulon is nothing less than very important to us, and we believe that bringing back sports youth and cheer organization to this community could be essential for everything, the growth of the children and the growth of the community. We as an organization, we're willing to do everything it takes. I know we're here before you now asking for some money, but our vision and what we've done thus far has been just from the bottom of our hearts. We poured all of our funding into it to get us where we are, when it comes to feeding the kids every time we have camps, or paying for the park that we're at to utilize these camps, or just getting the flyers and the signs and spreading the word in general. I do have a little mission statement here that I would like to read to you all. Okay, our mission as the Zebulon Vikings is to transform adversity into opportunity by providing a beacon of hope for the youth in our community. As former football players and cheerleaders who have faced our own hardship, we understand the transformative power of sports in shaping young lives. By launching a kids' Little League football organization, we aim to fill the void left by the lack of funding from local parks and recreation departments. We are driven by the profound desire to give back to the community that nurtured us. And, I'm not from Zebulon, but I can speak for Tori, DJ, Kiera. They all played and, coached or, for the Cougars. They've been here, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in Zebulon who have also played for the Cougars. And we're not here today to say that the Cougars are gone. We're just here to rebrand the Cougar name with new leadership and new coaches. That's to say, we cannot achieve this alone. We urgently seek funding and sponsors to ensure that every child in the community has a chance to experience the camaraderie, discipline, and joy that football can bring together. At this point, we're just trying to make it about the kids. One thing I know for a fact is us being at Wendell, we're seeing kids from Zebulon at Wendell, playing for Wendell. I myself, I've won a championship at Wendell with Zebulon kids. And we go play teams in Bunn, and you'll see Zebulon kids in Bunn. We go play Nightdale, you'll see Zebulon kids in Nightdale. So that was everything that came to our mind, like, why not Zebulon? Why can't we bring this football program back and make, kids proud? So with that being said, we have some brochures for you guys just to look at the numbers.
In those brochures, do you list what percentage of the children who are on your roster are from Zebulon?
No, we don't.
Do you have those numbers, or can you get those to us and email that to the board?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
that'd be so awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We also have, Sam Boyston also has a couple words to say. Not close.
Mayor and the board, I have a few words I'd like to share. I won't take up too much of your time. Appreciate it. Hello, I am Sam Bolson, board member and coach. I would like to share a quote with y'all from Hall of Fame coach Lou Holtz. This is a quote I think epitomizes why myself and these coaches are so passionate about bringing youth football and cheer back to Zebulon. It goes, coaching gives one a chance to be successful as well as significant. The difference between those two is that when you die, your success comes to an end. When you are significant, you continue to help others be successful long after you're gone. Significance lasts many lifetimes. This is why people teach, why people lead, and why people coach. As we leave the field of play, we will enjoy the feeling of being successful coaches. But more important, I hope that the Zebulon Vikings, youth football and cheer organization, have been people of significance in the lives of these youth. With that being said, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. We appreciate the time and the opportunity to lead the youth of Zebulon.
Thank you.
Oh, Mayor, I thought you were going to ask if we had questions.
Questions,
Can I
comments?
ask questions?
Go ahead.
I have a few questions for you guys. You mentioned that, yes, I do. Commissioner Baxter said, of course I do. Of course I do. You mentioned that you are rebranding the Cougars. Are you all a part of the Cougars? Like, how does that work? Rebranding, is the Cougars, are they still doing things, or are you all taking over that organization? Did they dissolve? Like, how does that work?
From my understanding, the Cougars are no longer a thing.
Okay.
And we just didn't want to get too far away from the history of the Cougars, who they once were. So we decided that, yes, we are the Zebulon Vikings, but we welcome all past Cougars to join us and know that we're trying to live through the same legacy that was started here. And, you know, unfortunately, it came to an end, but we do believe that something beautiful could happen here in Zebulon.
Thank you so much. And how many kids are you all currently serving in your program?
Currently, right now, we have about 70 kids registered.
Okay. And your organization, you mentioned that you guys are a 501c3. Have you all been, have you been identified by the IRS as a 501c3?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Did you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Good morning, good evening, everyone, the board and the town of Zebulon. I wanted to touch on what Commissioner Baxter had asked about the percentages of the number of players that's on each team. So I say roughly around 30% from mini mites, mighty mites, and peewees. You'll have about 8 to 10 players from each team that's from Zebulon. I'll give you a good example from the previous years. This past year, Bun and Zebulon completely merged. So the town of Bun benefited completely from having Zebulon players. Thurman, a good friend of mine, he was the old director. He took the whole team to Bun, and they merged together, you know, to try to save both programs. And as far as the old Zebulon Cougars, that's something I take pride in. I spent 14 years coaching for different teams, Raleigh Hill and Wendell, and each one of those programs progressed to the point where they had championship teams, three-peats. Sometimes they won year after year. And the stars of those teams come from Zebulon. So it's very, very, very important that we give these kids a home, not only provide them away from any kind of negativity, or they may just want to play football, try something different. But I know when I was growing up, I was able to call Zebulon Cougars my field when I played at Zebulon Middle, and then when I went to Eastwood High School, I still said my field because both of the starting running backs, chief of the Wake Forest Police Department, David Simmons, Zebulon native, just like I was. So both of us proudly represented Zebulon, and the Griswolds laid a foundation that I'll never get away from. They started this thing about 40 years ago with the Zebulon Cougars. They also founded the East Wake Football League that's now ran by Commissioner Napoleon Mills. So yes, I'm gonna forever be a Cougar. Just right now, the identity is a Zebulon Viking. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Hearing none. Public hearing. We will now have our public hearing on the budget. We will ask for those who wish to speak in favor, those who wish to speak against, and those who that are neither for or against, but have some general comments. I declare the public hearing open. If you would come to the podium.
Ask for those who wish to speak in favor first, please.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Hearing none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak against? Come to the podium and make sure we're talking about the budget only.
My name is Douglas Walton, and I'm speaking here tonight in opposition for funding for one project in the FY 2024-2025 budget. While I'm mostly in favor of the budget as proposed, I'm opposed to the spending of $2.3 million in transportation impact fees for an improvement in the intersection of Shepherd School Road / Old Bun Road / Proctor Street. I'm opposed to this project because from the looks of the plans for it, correct me if I'm wrong, it does not have any pedestrian crossings in it. In addition to that, besides the sidewalks it will build, this improvement will basically light $2.3 million on fire. I say this because due to the fact that car infrastructure improvements will never solve traffic. This is because cars, while great inventions, are inefficient methods of transporting humans due to the low amount of humans they can transport at a time. And if you make a whole society reliant on your own inefficient vehicle to go anywhere in a reasonable amount of time and without sacrifice, like we have since the 1950s, it results in our roads being clogged and slow and humans using their own inefficient vehicle to get to wherever they're going. The solution that's always, without a doubt, put into practice is to improve road infrastructure, like this $2.3 million intersection improvement. All road infrastructure improvements like this one do improve traffic, but only in the short term. This is because of a phenomenon called induced demand. And we've known about this phenomenon since the 1930s. Yet for the past 90 years, this country has stubbornly, with its fingers in its ears and head in the sand, continued to build such short-lived infrastructure just to temporarily move metal boxes a little faster. Is it really worth spending $2.3 million to make the intersection at Shepherd School Road / Old Bun Road / Proctor Street do that? In my opinion, absolutely not. Which is why I say, for the exception of sidewalks, spending $2.3 million on this improvement is just lighting that money on fire. While yes, if this improvement is built, it would be North Carolina DOT's problem going forth, but we are all still paying for this. We are all still paying for the maintenance and future upgrades of this improvement through state taxes. No matter what, if this project is approved, millions of dollars are going to be wasted, when this $2.3 million can be better spent on actually implementing solutions that would actually solve traffic, which is to provide adequate alternatives to personal and efficient vehicles. While we do have an alternative method of transportation in Smart Ride, which I love and use multiple times a week, this service has problems which will take too long to get into tonight. But all the problems I have with Smart Ride can be fixed with more funding, which could come from this $2.3 million. From this money, we can build all the sidewalk projects that have been proposed, and any remainder of funds can be saved to construct the 3 proposed Greenway projects in the future, build even more sidewalks, or it can be saved to reduce the financial burden of repairing our current expensive car-centric infrastructure. Smart Rides, sidewalks, and greenways are the true solutions to solving traffic in our town, because if all 3 were fully developed and funded, they can incentivize our residents to use those alternatives instead of their own personal inefficient vehicle to get around town, thus removing vehicles off our roads, reducing road damage, making our roads less congested, making travel on our roads faster, and solve traffic. I asked of this government to spend this $2.3 million in transportation impact fees on the alternatives I mentioned and to not light this money on fire for a short-lived intersection improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speak against? Hearing none. Is there anyone who wishes to speak neither for nor against, but have some general comments to the budget? Please come forward.
Good evening. I first have to apologize because I did not have any prepared remarks, so these are going to be fairly free-form. However, my concerns are that in a time period where people are spending a great deal of money just trying to take care of childcare, in a time period where people are having difficulty making their ends meet with regard to their bills and their groceries, and where people are taking in 2 or 3 jobs, I think it's necessary to seriously consider any advantation towards moving forward with taxing them further or increasing a bond which will place a burden upon their children. Having said that, I'm not speaking for or against, because the challenge I have is I saw a lot of holes in what was presented today. I saw that something was going to cost $1.5 million, but maybe twice that much. I saw that there may be planning directors necessary to resolve certain holes or to determine what something would be. That means that you, the people that I voted into those chairs, are not making informed decisions. Now, it's fascinating to me because I just finished listening to a Senate hearing today in which we found out that large portions of what was done during COVID cost us a great deal and people acted upon insufficient knowledge. And this caused a national problem. So I'm not coming here to do what most people do, which is to ask you to do something for me. Instead, I'm going to make a proposal to you with my resources, my contacts, and the people I know who have an interest in both civil service, civil engineering, and law, and the judges that I have contacts with. I would request for you to provide to me the detailed plans of what these specific alterations to our streets are going to entail, and the traffic patterns and expertise that was put into the determination of whether these will actually make a change. Will the roundabouts actually bring about traffic flow or increase traffic congestion due to accidents? Will the concrete barriers prevent emergency vehicles from moving over the roads or better influence traffic movement? Will the widening of the roads actually increase traffic through Zebulon or simply create bottlenecks as tight roads move into wide roads that move back into tight roads? Instead of me asking you to do something, I'm going to ask that you provide, I and the rest of my peers, the evidence that shows that the proposals put forth actually make a difference before a single cent or a single inconvenience is imposed upon any citizen of this town. And I will offer my services and my time to bring forth consenting and dissenting positions so that you, my elected representatives, can make an informed choice before anybody has to pay taxes, be inconvenienced on the road, or have their life disrupted by perhaps a well-intended, but perhaps not the best long-term resolution. I ask this because today we found out that all of us, because of what happened in this nation, were damaged. Therefore, I am willing to offer my services and my time to find out whether what is proposed is going to do the job. And then, once I have an informed decision, I will forward it to you. All I'm asking for is the plans, the expertise, and the data, the evidence that proves that this solves the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak neither for or against? Podium, please.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor York, Mayor Pro Tem Harrison, Commissioners. My name is Scott Carpenter. I live at 214 Sorton Street in Zebulon. I don't know if I'm for or against the budget. I had some prepared comments that I'm just going to completely forego because I think what I heard just a few minutes ago is that we have alignment. My comments are, let's do all that we can for the Zebulon Police Department. Let's give them the salary that they need. The town of Greensboro just recently upped their town salary, and the city of Raleigh is actively pursuing it. I would hate to lose the good stuff that we have here in Zebulon by a failure to act. And with the growth that we have of 7 residents per day is the number that we keep hearing. If we have more and more residents, if we need more and more officers, let's give that department what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak neither for or against? Come to the podium, please.
Hey, my name is Gregory Seelix, and I live in Autumn Lakes, 232 Indian Summer Street. So overall, my priorities is, I would say, the park system. You know, the Whitley Park proposal with the splash pad, I'm totally for that. The Gill Street, me personally, I just don't think it's a great idea to do the investments for the bathrooms without, doing what it takes to look at the lead. And now that's something that we can go back to later at a future time, but right now I just don't think that really makes a lot of sense to put investment there before we know exactly what we're dealing with in terms of executing the cleanup. Now, I'm for that doing a thorough cleanup with the hazmat units and stuff like that instead of just putting the paving or anything like that. But overall, my view on the budget is I understand that we're sort of limited by disproportionate funding. You got GlaxoSmithKline, you got Truist. I understand how we're sort of handicapped as a tax base. In the police department, I'm even for those increases too, but trying to take a holistic approach, I think that all of our departments essentially need more funding, which it sounds great. I know that we need to essentially, we're gonna require more revenue to actually make that happen. And that's why I know that right now, there's only so much we can do with this budget. But going forward with our future projects, I think that that's something that as we draw more businesses in, we're gonna need to, amplify everyone's wages so that we can keep everybody here in Zebulon, and make things happen. So overall, I like the modifications, not with the bathrooms installments right now. Love the Whitley Park idea. I think our Parks and Rec, we just keep investing more in that. And yeah, overall, look, I'm a fairly new resident, about a year in. We moved from Raleigh. I love this town. I sense the passion from the board, planning department, everybody that's here today, and I just want to keep building on it. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Ayana Glaze. I'm from Autumn Lakes as well, 232 Indian Summer Street. And I just want to speak about some of the things I've thought about while we were listening to the budget presentation. So overall, I would like to see investment in several different areas in our town, including public transportation, public event spaces, and greenway connectivity. As well as fixing some of the infrastructure problems that have been discussed, like the stormwater drainage system, as well as our downtowns. It does concern me that there's 2 companies that have about a 38% impact on the town's revenue. And so I would like to see a more concentrated effort into bringing larger companies into Zebulon from different industries. So like warehousing, biomedical laboratories, hospitals, doctors' offices, to help spread that out so that we don't have to depend on 2 companies for a considerable portion of the town's revenue. And I also would like to see more mixed zoning used in town. Considering that some of the priorities of this town in terms of what projects are approved to go forward. I know that keeping the small town feel is really important. And so I believe that mixed use zoning really contributes to that, because you can work where you live and live where you play, and you can walk to where you need to go. And so that lends to being more accessible for people with lower income statuses as well as people with disabilities. Also in terms of an industry that I would like to see, or a business I would like to see, is I think a truck stop might actually be a really good idea. I've just noticed a lot of trucks coming here and a lot of trucks parking along the ramps, and I think that would be really good business, just saying. In regards to the parks, I do agree that I am surprised that Gill Street doesn't have bathrooms. I don't know if it's a newly acquired park or not, but I would rather see an effort in cleaning up the park to make sure it's safe for everyone. Looking at the map, there's a considerable amount of area that is contaminated with lead that is above the guidelines, and I'm not sure what the other areas are, but even if it's not above that standard, I of course would like to see it greatly reduced. So however that can be handled to where we prioritize the safety of our children and future generations to come would be great. I'm not quite sure this is part of the budget, but when we were looking at the videos on YouTube, I know there was talk about a sustainability committee, and I do believe that that should be a separate committee on its own. I believe that that area is a multidisciplinary area and should not necessarily be just nestled under Parks and Rec, but should honestly be working with multiple departments within the government. And so I believe that should be a standalone committee as well. And then I guess I'll wrap up with the salaries. I do believe, I'm actually kind of surprised with how little the police officers our entry-level police officers are making. And I do believe that we should increase the salaries for those, but I also, over the past year that I've been paying attention to these meetings, have heard that other staff and other departments are also understaffed and overworked and overburdened. And I've also heard over this past year, of multiple instances of projects having to be pushed back because of that. And so I would also like to, when you guys make the decision about salaries and salary increase, that we also consider everyone in the town of government's salaries, and them being able to feel welcomed and important, because they all help our community be safe and successful. Thank you.
Anyone else?
It's good evening now. Good evening. Very quickly, I'm neither for nor against the budget. Sure, Barkia Ormond, 3218 Whispernut Lane in Zebulon, North Carolina. Really quickly, as a former government manager, I want to employ all of you as you sit down with this budget to focus on the opportunity costs that we have if you don't increase police salary, if you don't do a salary study with a third party, not an internal one. Bring in resources, allocate funding for a proper and a fully holistic salary study. You're going to spend the money anyway. Where will you spend the money? You'll spend it in retraining. You'll spend it in replacing officers. You'll spend it in marketing. You'll spend it in advertising. You will spend the money if we do not invest in retaining quality officers on our police force, quality firemen as a part of that particular public safety organization. We will spend the money to replace them. We will spend the money in litigation. We will spend the money in increased liability costs for insurance policies, all of which are a burden and a responsibility of the taxpayers. So give those things considerable thought. Invest the resources to do the work. Be accountable. Be transparent. Bring that information fully to your voting body and explain to them why you need additional revenue, if in fact that is the case. The town manager explained to us tonight that you've made a decision, and I say you as the board, some of you may not have been seated at that point, to not drop your reserves below a certain level. I certainly understand the principle and the need for fiduciary responsibility, but currently the town is in need to balance growth and balance burden to our citizens. People are spending more money to survive. I live in the largest community, someone correct me if I'm wrong, in this town. There are multiple police officers in our community. It's fantastic to ride by all those squad cars. One thing I noticed, not a single one of those officers has a Town of Zebulon car because they cannot afford to live here. They cannot afford to live here in their community, build those relationships, have the opportunity to establish their own families, be productive. They can't afford to maintain their jobs on the force without taking secondary employment. Employment that's limited based on our lack or limited places for them to actually work at night. So look at that, because we're spending the money anyway. Every time the chief has to say, hey, we've got to stop what we're doing and I've got to have a senior staff person work with a new hire, we've lost money. Every time someone says, you know what, I've got to relocate and I can't afford to do this anymore, we've lost money. You're spending the money anyway. Whatever line item it's being moved from, whatever request that's outside of the budget terms are being identified and targeted, you're spending the money anyway. So we are asking you to give clear, transparent discussion and results to the town as to what our police and fire and other public administrators, as I once was for over 10 years, need to survive in Zebulon to help the town thrive. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak neither for or against? General comments.
Good evening. I hate to beat a dead horse, but
Will you state your name, please?
Milton Robinson, 336 Rustling Way, Zebulon. So I see the ground up there for 2030, which is good. We're trying to invest for our future. But part of it, I'm neither for or against the budget. I saw some good things, but I saw some areas, especially dealing with our youth, that we could invest in. I myself have made a proposal for some community events that I presented to the commissioners, and it has been turned down. I just urge, if we don't think about our youth and what we're trying to get to, we're going to lose that, and then where are we going to stand as a town? That's my only thing. Just, I think we need to incorporate some of those things where we could spend money and where we couldn't spend money into. They have a good thing going. Why not invest in it? Why not make it ours? Make it Zebulon's? There are other things we can do. That's my 2 cents. Like I said, I hate to beat a dead horse, but I really implore you to think about where the town is going, especially for the ones that are coming up. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak neither for nor against general budget comments?
Mayor, I have some comments from public input that I would like to read, please.
Proceed.
The first one is from Cindy Mallard. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I do not have a lot of comments or questions. I appreciate the services that the town is able to provide, and all staff does a great job at providing to us. I greatly appreciate it. I am glad to see transportation as a priority, as I think this is the #1 issue for us at this time. I did notice on one of the pie charts that stormwater was a very small slice, and I hope that that is sufficient. And for a personal thought, what happened to the pickleball courts? The next comment was from Jonathan Sagaski. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Expansion of the parks and greenway has my full support. This infrastructure is crucial to help make Zebulon a great place to live, as well as preserving public land. I am part of the New Barrington community. Adding parks and greenways will drastically improve quality of life for the people of Zebulon. I also had some comments from people that spoke this evening, so I will not read those since they did speak. And that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to speak neither for or against?
Mayor, may I have a moment of personal privilege to make a statement?
Go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all of you that came out and gave us such well thought out, heartful, well-intentioned suggestions. Thank you for paying attention to what we've been working so hard to try and accomplish. Thank you for your suggestions. We will take them into consideration. I just feel so very grateful for every single person who has come out today and let us know what your priorities are and how you see us making our community better. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. That was awesome. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. If no one else wishes to speak, I declare the public hearing closed.
Excuse me, Mayor, the board has before them consideration the budget ordinance for 2024-2025. They have completed all statutory requirements and have the ability and the authority to adopt a budget ordinance if they so choose. Staff recommendation, the recommended budget is staff's recommendation. It's delivered to you focused on the strategic goals and projects of your strategic plan, as well as your comprehensive plans and your master plans. It is a reflection that you do have an exceptional tax base, reflects your citizens' needs, not only as collected in the different strategic planning efforts, but as well as what's been observed by staff on frontline and the services provided. And it also supports the number and quality of employees needed to meet these demands. Options for the board is to approve the recommended budget or modify the recommended budget. Take any final questions from the Board of Commissioners. Sample motion is provided for them to consider.
Questions, comments from the board?
I think that we've heard a lot tonight, and in addition, I don't think that we fully hashed out all of the things that we were talking about at our last work session. In addition, we received new information both from the police department as well as the public works department that I would like to have time to further review. These are, of course, big decisions, and I would like to spend some more time making sure that I understand all of the different components of what has gone into both the recommended budget and some of the modifications that we've talked about that I would like to see us adopt in order to move forward with, the right budget for right now. And so my thought is that we
table this for our next work session, which I believe is scheduled for the 11th. So table this until the 11th to give us more of an opportunity to not only review the additional information that we have received, but to maybe come up with any additional questions for staff.
Are you making a motion?
I can, unless anyone else has any other thoughts.
Any further discussion? Comments, questions?
Then I would like to table the budget discussion until the, gosh, we're in June already. June 11th at 6 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor of the motion? Motion passes. Thank you. Parks and Recs, sustainability.
Mayor and members of the board, in your budget process last year, you identified an interest in wanting to pursue sustainability and to include joining B City USA in that process. And so we did work, as we presented to the board, with an intern from NC State. That internship wrapped up mid-May. We also shared at that time a recommendation to establish a sustainability board that would oversee not just B City USA, but also Tree City USA, and would specifically address environmental sustainability issues such as environmental protection and urban forestry, recycling, and energy use. At the May 15th work session, the Board of Commissioners provided direction to staff to bring forward ordinance changes that create the Sustainability Board and possibly assign the duties to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. The board also requested to hear from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on serving as the Sustainability Board. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board met on May 20th, 2024, and the Advisory Board, by unanimous vote, provided the below feedback to the Board of Commissioners. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board believes that bees and trees are critical to the environment. There is a concern that there might be a lack of knowledge and interest on the advisory board in order to see it through to make a lasting impact. While they feel that there may be some connection to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, they feel that there may be some in the community with more interest and expertise that would be a better fit. If it is assigned to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, they want to make sure that they have access to the resources and consultants needed to see it through. Ordinance 2024-49 replaces the Tree Board with a Sustainability Board. The board also will consider whether to appoint the duties of the Sustainability Board to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board until members of the Sustainability Board can be appointed if you choose to go in that direction. In order to join B City, the Board of Commissioners must also adopt a resolution. The fiscal year 2025 budget proposed to include $5,000 to support sustainability efforts. Additional funds may be needed to provide necessary resources and consultants to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, depending upon the depth of the pest management plan. Additional staff, equipment, and supply costs could apply and will need to be considered as that plan is developed, and it may be something that you would want to phase in. I will share that the Sustainability Board proposal has been vetted through B City and Tree City, and it meets their requirements to participate in their program. The resolution before you for that's 2024-26 for the B City affiliated designation also met their requirement of being vetted by them before it is up for you to vote on, so they have approved it as written if you want to proceed with it. So the proposed Sustainability Board does meet their expectations, and it's for you to consider if you'd like to adopt Ordinance 2024-49 and Resolution 2024-26 As you adopt ordinance 2024-49, you will notice that we did not specifically state that the appointed individuals will be the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, but you could make that motion separately. We offered that to you without that language so that if you choose to go that route or choose not to go that route, it gives you some flexibility. I'm available to answer questions.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
He didn't even have to look, he knew. So I think that's actually a very good way for us to handle that, to give us some flexibility as to how that board is going to be comprised. I think initially having it warehoused with the Parks and Rec Board until we can maybe build out a group of folks that would like to take part on a sustainability board is it's the right direction for us to go. And then my only other comment is in the resolution on the second whereas, it needs to be honey space bees in order to be spelled correctly. That's it.
I'm sure that we use the language that Bee City provided us, but we can make that change.
I know you did, but technically that's how it's, honeybees are just a type of bees, so. But thank you for the work on this. I think that this is something that we're gonna do awesome with, so I appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Are we ready for a motion?
I would like to move to approve ordinance 2024-49.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? We'll do a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter? Favor. Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Davis?
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sheila, back up. You have one more motion.
Sorry.
The resolution.
I'd like to make a, do we approve that? Make a motion to approve.
For the resolution, we need to do.
Resolution 2024-26.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. We have a roll vote. Commissioner Davis?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter?
Favor.
Motion passes.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Special events.
I come before you in similar fashion to how we have handled our street closures for events, for town events such as Rock the Block, Candy Cane Lane, and Spring Fest. We were approached by Mount Zion Holy Church, and I apologize, it says Holiness Church, but Mount Zion Holy Church recently about doing a back-to-school event on the Gill Street area, and we've engaged in conversation. It's a great fit for us to work with Mount Zion Holy Church to serve our community members, expand upon what they're seeking to do with their back-to-school event, and just create great connections in the community. And it's a great first step to a wonderful partnership that we hope to have with Mount Zion. So we are proposing to close Gill Street from East Stronach Avenue to Cemetery Road from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The time of the event would be 10 to 2 p.m. on August 3rd. And I'm available to answer questions.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
So at the bottom, under fiscal analysis, there is not a fiscal analysis, and I'm wondering what the estimated cost for this is going to be. I know that there's probably going to be staff hours, and we usually do have some members of the police department who are there who are in a paid capacity, and then some who are there in a volunteer capacity. So do we know what the approximate cost is going to be?
So this is very new to us, and just because of the time frame of August, we are still in a planning process with Mount Zion. So they've just recently approached us within the last month. And so we've had just a very short window to work with them, and we want to do everything we can to make it possible. So we are still outlining the specifics of how that event will move forward, and what it will require from the other departments. I will say that what is being proposed from a Parks and Rec department perspective, we would be able to work in advance with Public Works to limit them having to come in after hours to set it up and try to hold that within our staff. And then with the police department, there would be great opportunity to connect with the community. But again, we haven't had the full time to flush out every single thing and every detail of what it's going to cost. We do have some funds, and we've had that conversation with them that we had presented for community engagement opportunities. And so we feel that this is what would fit there in a wonderful way, and we would love to see it move forward, very much like the Gill Street Community Cookout and coat giveaway. It's just a way to expand upon that. So we're still fleshing that out. We just don't have a lot of time we need to know if we can close the street before we can go much further with them.
So this is just going to ask for the street closure, and then as far as the actual event, will you come back before us when you've got those numbers kind of figured out?
I can if you need me to.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. In addition, has the church agreed to allow folks to use their restroom during this event?
So their church will be open. They'll be having activities within the church as well as activities that'll be on the street. And so my assumption, I did not specifically ask them if their bathrooms would be available, but I can certainly ask that question because it is intended to be a community event that included use of the church and the park and that street in between as well. So I can specifically ask that. It was an assumption. And so we are scheduled to meet very soon. I told them the most important thing was to know whether or not I could close the street in the time frame that we've got to work with. And then once we knew that, we would be able to then figure out what exactly we could make work. So.
With all that said, I make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-27.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, I would like to just make sure that we ask staff to come back with that fiscal analysis, and also with what the church agrees to as far as the use of the restroom facilities during the time of the program.
Any further discussion? Comments? We have a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
Approve.
Commissioner Harps? Favor. Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Davis? Favor. Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheila.
Mayor, can we take 5 minutes, please?
Recess.
Thank you.
Reconvene. Board appointments. I was informed earlier today that the application for Mr. Hughes, David Hughes, that was received back in October 2023 did not make it to the packets and will need to be added as a possible appointment to the planning board.
With that said, Mayor, before, okay, go ahead.
Pardon me? I'm sorry.
Did you need to read something?
No, I can, just let you know that from what you can see on the screen, that these are the people that, or the positions that are open, and the people that have made an application to serve on these particular boards.
One quick question. I received communication as well, emails in reference to a few citizens that did apply for the ETJ positions, but the applications are not here. That was my reason for calling today, to see exactly what happened to the applications.
Depending on who it is, we have received some applications that were not in our ETJ, and those particular people were notified. If you would like to get with me tomorrow, you can share those names with me, and I can look them up.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Now we ask for those who have submitted applications to come forward and share why they want to be appointed to the board. Mr. Hughes? The podium on my...
Good evening, citizens of Zebulon, Mayor, Board of Commissioners, and staff. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Hughes. I reside at 900 East Horton Street in Zebulon. I've been a resident here since 1969. My family and I have been very involved in our church, civic organizations, and the community involvement as well. My experience kind of speaks for itself. I've been on the planning board for over 25 years plus. I've served as vice chair and chair. I left the planning board to pursue Board of Adjustment, just to try to take on a different role within the town. And I felt like over time, being on the Board of Adjustment, I felt that my experience and my expertise is better fit for the planning board. So I stepped down. As you can see, there's one ETJ member for the Board of Adjustment. That was me. And now I'm pursuing to get back on the planning board. My experience, I'm a residential designer by trade. I work with builders, developers, realtors, homeowners. I know the town. I know how it works. So I feel like I'm a good fit because I'm I know what the pros and cons are as far as a developer and a builder is concerned, and I know what the staff and the town needs. So I just feel like I'm better suited for that position. Over the years, I'm like everybody else. Since 1969, I've seen a lot of changes in this town. Some good, some bad. But I just feel like that my experience to get back on this board, and not knocking the current planning board, but it seems like there is some inexperience. And I just feel like I can bring that back to the table and work with you, the commissioners and staff, to shape this town into a better community than what we're heading towards now. I always hear from a lot of people that, I wish we had a hotel. I wish we had a Cracker Barrel. You keep hearing all these things, but the things they don't realize is you got to have the rooftops before that comes. And then you also hear, well, we don't want all these neighborhoods coming. Well, you got to have them to get all these other things. But there's a correct way to make all that work together. And that's what I think I can bring to the table. So I just would like your consideration to be back on the planning board, and I just feel like I can be a good asset for the town. Are there any questions?
Comments from Mr. Hughes? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Parks and Rec. Mr. Underhill.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Board. Good evening, staff. My name is Gary Underhill. I live at 120 West North Street here in town. I would like to keep going with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. I have lived here for 6 years. I grew up in Wendell all my life. Went to Zebulon Middle School, went to Eastwake High School. I enjoy this town. I love this town. Been involved with sports all my life. Enjoy it. When I got out of high school, going to the school of Wake Tech, I joined the Parks and Rec here in town. I worked there for 3 years, 2 years at the community center doing Parks and Rec camps, and then also 1 year working in the park maintenance with Jimmy Harris. Had a great time with Jimmy and maintaining our parks. I really want to help grow this town, and the way that I see it is with Parks and Rec, that growth helps the community grow, helps engage, thrive the community. And when companies come and look at our town, they look at the parks, they look at what type of environment we have. And our parks are probably one of the top ones that we have in Wake County. And I just want to help grow that with the growth that we're seeing here. So I would just like to continue my 6 years that I've been with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board with another term. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions, Commissioner Underhill? Thank you. Board of Adjustments. Dr. Cohen, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Representational governments are dependent upon resolution of conflicts. When a government fails to listen to its citizens, the citizens have an obligation to rise up against it. This has happened. When the citizens are not listened to, the leadership becomes in peril. There are checks and balances in any government to avoid this level of extreme. One of those checks and balances is the Board of Adjustments. It's set up for the purpose of resolving conflicts and decreasing conflict with leaders, allowing citizens to be heard and allowing citizens to be understood and perhaps get resolution, even if not satisfaction. I believe I bring some qualities that would benefit the Board of Adjustments in the attempt to revive it. For the last 35 years, as a forensic investigator and forensic psychologist, I have worked in the realm of the clinical gratification or clinical satisfaction of a client's needs for their personal development, but it's always been within 1 foot also in legal and court-decided requirements. I have been able to operate from evidence, not only people's desires or the wishes. Objectivity is an essential part of anybody in a Board of Adjustments because it permits for evidence to be the primary king in the resolution of any issue regarding land usage, any issue regarding ordinance or variances, or any issue regarding contestation of conflict with the town. I believe I can bring that objectivity, and I believe I have the willingness to research things and pull the evidence forth to bring a conclusion that is most likely to be satisfactory both to the citizen and safe for the town for risk analysis. I thank you for your attention.
Any questions, comments? Dr. Cohen. Thank you. So at this time, I guess, does the board feel comfortable voting on these selections?
We have one ETJ vacancy on the planning board. Dr. Laura is not here, and I believe that we have several other applications that we're not seeing. And I believe that Mr. Hughes is an in-town resident, so I would like to...
He is not an in-town
No, you're
resident.
not. I'm sorry, you're
Nope.
not?
No.
Okay. I would like to see the remainder of the planning board applications come before us, but since we have multiple vacancies both in Parks and Rec and on the Board of Adjustment, I feel comfortable reappointing Mr. Underhill and appointing Dr. Crowan to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and the Board of Adjustment respectively.
Discussion?
I'd like to hold off on planning board as well till we get the rest of the applications as well.
Can you say that again, sir?
I would like to hold off on the planning board as well.
Table it.
Correct. Just the planning board section.
Right.
We can move forward with Park and Rec. I'm fine with that, as well as the Board of Adjustment.
Ask how many planning board applications we don't have?
To my understanding, the other applications that we received were not within the ETJ. So that is why they were not brought forward. I can't tell you yes or no because I don't have them in front of me. So waiting until the next meeting, I can bring that information to you definitively.
Perfect.
On them. So not a problem.
Excellent. And so can we make a motion to, do you want to table that to our next regularly scheduled meeting, or do you want to table that to our work session on the 11th?
Regular scheduled meeting is fine for me.
I would like to make a motion to appoint David Hughes to our planning board.
I've already made,
Doesn't matter.
yeah.
We don't have a motion yet on the floor.
We don't have a motion on the
No.
floor? Okay, all right, go ahead. My apologies, Commissioner Clark.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to appoint David Hughes to the planning board. Discussion? We have a roll vote. Commissioner Baxter?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Commissioner Davis?
Not in favor.
Motion does not pass.
Could you please get those additional applications for us?
If they are in town, yes, you will. If they are eligible to be brought forward, I will bring them forward.
Wonderful.
Do we need a motion?
If you want
To-
to tell me when you want to bring them forward,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Could you please, I'd like to make a motion to have those brought forward to us for the June 11th.
Planning board.
I'm so,
For the planning board.
for the planning board for the June 11th work session,
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Discussion. We have a roll vote. Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Harrison.
Not in favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Baxter, I'm sorry.
Sometimes I go by Clark. Not often, but in favor.
Motion passes to bring that back on the 11th.
No, was it 11th or next
The
week?
11th.
11th is
At
the next.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Like 6 p.m. Perfect.
Now, the Parks and Recs Advisory Board.
I make a motion to reappoint Garrett Underhill to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. We'll have a roll vote. Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Motion passes. The,
Board of Adjustment.
yeah, from the alternate to the,
Why don't you address the one you have right now and then bring that one up, please?
okay. You got that. Okay. Board of Adjustment for Dr. Cohen in
I
town.
would like to make a motion to appoint Dr. Crowan to the Board of Adjustment.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Miles. Discussion. Roll vote, Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Mayor, I would like to make a motion to, I would like to have a discussion with the board in regards to naming Scott Carpenter to the Board of Adjustments as an in-town member instead of the in-town alternate that he currently serves in. Does anyone have?
Any discussion?
I think he should be put as our in-town rep.
Any other discussion?
Just- I would like to offer the opportunity, if Mr. Scott would like, he would like to come up and say anything.
Would you like to come up and speak? Mr. Cobb?
Could I have
Carpenter, rather.
a point of clarification first, please? But you can come on up. Are we legally required to have alternates as well? Or we're just legally required to have the full complement of both in-town and ETJ members? I don't know the answer to that.
Here comes the answer.
Yep, here it comes.
Good evening, members of the board. North Carolina General Statute 160D is very clear on this, that it does require both regular as well as alternate members to serve on your Board of Adjustment.
Thank you.
Okay, and so, okay, all right.
Good evening again, Scott Carpenter. You recently appointed me as an alternate. I believe the vote that evening was 2 of you suggested me for a regular appointment, 3 for the alternate. So I do feel that I had full support. I have been onboarded with Director Clark. I would like to be a regular member of the Board of Adjustment. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions, comments? Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes.
The motion on the floor.
Did you make that motion?
I think.
Just
Did I? Okay, I did not.
It was just discussion.
All right, my bad. I would like to make a motion to appoint Scott Carpenter to the Board of Adjustments as an in-town member.
We have a mission.
Second. We got going. Where you going?
We have a motion and a second.
Excuse me, Commissioner Harrison, or Mayor Pro Tem, can you make it clear that it's an in-town regular position and not an alternate?
Yes, I can. You want to mouth to me exactly how you want. I would like to make a motion to appoint Scott Carpenter as an in-town regular instead of Board of Adjustment position. Okay.
Second still stands, or?
Yeah,
And I'll second that again.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is the bond order.
Recognize Bobby Fitz.
Thanks, Joe. Ashley Anderson, our bond counsel from Sands Anderson, is here to explain a little bit about the next step in the bond process, introducing the bond order. She's going to speak a little bit to that, and I'm going to pass out the unamended notice, the resolution declaring not declaring, but calling for the public hearing on June 18th. The resolution in your packet was done before we amended, changed the meeting from the 13th to the 18th. So this one will have the 18th on it. I'm going to pass that out while Ashley speaks to the bond order.
Bobby, I made that adjustment and already handed it out to them.
We already got
If you made other changes, they should already have it.
To waste trees, we'll take it.
Yeah, okay.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. As Bobby said, my name is Ashley Anderson. I'm an attorney with Sands Anderson, and I serve as the town's bond counsel as we move forward, working towards a November referendum for general obligation bonds. Tonight, we have two steps we need to take as we head to November. We need to introduce the bond order, which is in your packet, and we also need to adopt a resolution setting a public hearing for June 18th. The bond order, let's start with the introduction of the bond order. The bond order is the basic action by which the town board will provide the underlying authority and the approval for the bond issuance. The bond order in your packet, that information is set by statute. There will be a time for discussion on the bond order, and that will be at the public hearing on June 18th. Tonight, we just need to introduce the bond order. Statute requires that the bond order come before the board twice, once tonight for introduction and again on the 18th for a public hearing. So with that, I would ask that the board make a motion to introduce the bond order as presented tonight, and that would be a bond order authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds, general obligation streets and sidewalks bonds in the maximum amount of $20 million.
Any questions, comments from the board?
Just to make sure that I'm understanding everything correctly from what we have in our budget, where it looks like we are pulling bond funds potentially at the end of the year if the bond passes, but we are not going to be obligated according to the documentation to begin to pay back those funds until fiscal year 26, correct?
So the way the bond process works, we'll have should we continue to proceed and you adopt the bond order on the 18th, we will have a referendum in November. It will be on the ballot.
Right.
If it passes, you can choose to issue the bonds you have 7 years to issue the bonds. You can extend that 3 years. You may or may not choose to issue the bonds. I can't speak specifically to what the anticipated timeline for issuing that is. That's probably a Bobby question, but approving the bond order does not tie you to any debt. You only incur the debt when you issue the bonds.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. But what I'm understanding, I believe from the budget, is that we would be issuing some of those bond funds in the next fiscal year.
Yes, that's the plan. I think it's kind of a staggered, I don't remember the stagger. I think it was maybe 4 million, 4, 8. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was like a staggered thing in 25, 26, where the debt service will begin, like you said, not until 26 at the earliest. Nothing this coming year as far as
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding that correctly, because that's how I read it, but just because I read it one way, I'd rather have somebody that knows all the everything to tell me that that's correct. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
So I'm going to amend, so we're not going to take any action on the bond order tonight. We're not adopting it. We just need to it's been introduced, and we need a motion from the board acknowledging that.
And that's 24, 29, correct?
No, that would be 2024, 28. Oh, it is 29? No, that's the resolution. No, I haven't gotten to that yet. We just need an acknowledgement from the board that the bond order has been introduced as presented tonight.
Questions?
A motion,
We need a motion. Is there a sample motion?
I'm sorry, is the resolution 2024-28?
so we're not adopting a resolution tonight on the bond order. The next step will be adopting a resolution to set a public hearing.
Okay.
For the bond order, I think there was some miscommunication about the structure and the agenda.
Yeah, I have two.
Yes.
So which one needs to be adopted?
The resolution needs to be adopted, but we need to officially acknowledge the introduction of the bond order. They're two separate documents.
A simple motion of the board is acknowledging the fact that the bond order has been presented to them on June 3rd, 2024, at their regular meeting would be sufficient.
It should be titled Bond Order Authorizing the Issuance of General Obligation Streets and Sidewalks Bonds in the Maximum Amount of $20 million.
Okay. So I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-28.
That's not.
It needs to
Not yet.
Acknowledge.
It just to acknowledge or introduce the bond order.
Not adopt, just acknowledge.
It's a strange statutory requirement.
So
I'd like to acknowledge Resolution 2024-28 then? Okay. I'm not doing any more.
Okay.
So just a motion to introduce the bond order.
I want to make a motion to acknowledge the bond order.
As presented.
The bond order as presented by staff.
That works.
All right. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Davis.
I agree.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Harris.
Favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
I'm in favor of the acknowledgement.
Motion passes.
Now we have something for you to actually adopt. So you also have in your packet a resolution setting the public hearing and authorizing the filing of your sworn statement of debt. This will set a formal public hearing for June 18th at 6 p.m. Where we will have a public hearing on the bond order and take more comments from the board and the public at that time.
So is this 24-29?
Yes.
24-29. I make a motion that we accept Resolution 2024-29.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second. Is there a discussion? Roll vote. Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison.
Favor.
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Board comments?
Not yet, sir.
Oh, where am I?
Budget.
It says
Oh, I'm sorry. Contract services requests. Amendment. Commissioner Baxter.
All right, let me just pull it out of my pile. Yeah, I'd like to have an understanding of the $8,000 per month and how that is transferring over to $40,000. Is this paying back the contract, or is this replenishing the funds so that we can fund the IT position?
Neither.
Okay, well then,
What this
do tell.
does is, this is very similar to what was done in Public Works when they were asking for a set amount to pay for engineering, that they had been transferring money month after month after month. And this is what we have been doing. And finally, we're just at a place where, it's easier just to do one lump sum to transfer that money to get us whole again in that line item and then cover the rest of the year.
so the $40,000 is just to make sure that we're paying off the IT services for the remainder of the fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am. And it's covering, I don't have enough money in that line item. We have gone negative, and we can't go negative. We've got to clean up that line item, and instead of transferring 10,000 from here and there, it was easier to do a budget amendment like what was done for Public Works.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Then I am happy to make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-47.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Roll vote. Commissioner Davis.
Favor.
Commissioner Clark.
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now, board comments. Commissioner Davis.
Welcome, June. With that, we have entered graduation season, so I would just like to say congratulations to all the graduates for the class of 2024 from East Wake High School and East Wake Academy, and even though the younger ones that are celebrating. So good deal. We went this week to the commencement for East Wake Academy. That was wonderful to see. We also had the opportunity to attend Zebulon Elementary and cheer on the youth there. They started their EOGs last week, and my understanding is they wrapped it up today. So was just excited to see the community come together again. Zebulon Police Department was there, and the fire department, and all the town leaders. So that was really awesome. So you know me, I'm always going to say go youth. So I'm just excited. And to all the dads out there, happy Father's Day in advance.
Commissioner Clark.
I'd just like to say it was such a good turnout for our budget discussion, our public hearing, and we had some nice comments, and some just gave their opinions, and I really liked hearing all of that. It was very nice.
Commissioner Harrison.
I agree with all the sentiments from my fellow commissioners. Just wanted to let the board know that in November we will visit, we plan to visit our city summit for the National League of Cities. During that time, our Youth Advisory Council will have their annual meeting where they have over 300 youth from across the U.S. that will be representing their towns and cities. It is already booked, and we are turning people away left and right. Fortunately, we know a person that knows a person, and we were able to talk to the board for YEF, and they are willing to allow 2 youth from the town of Zebulon to attend the summit with with me, with us, with the board. And so I would love for the staff to bring us back the information about the youth council, as well as if anyone has, I don't know how we could begin this conversation to identify those 2 youth that we would want to bring with us to represent our town. But it's going to be an amazing opportunity for a conference for our youth, for them to bring back. A lot of conversation today was based on youth and what they want and what they need. And now we have an opportunity to bring 2 of our youth with us to hear from other youth and what they're doing and what they see, to bring back to us what they want to do instead of being, told as much. So that is something that we will continue in conversations, but I just wanted to let the board know that that is something I'm very excited about and hope that we can move forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Baxter?
Yeah, so learning of this exciting opportunity, I think that is going to have to be something that we get some financial analysis back for, maybe to add into the budget if we are going to be offering to pay for any portion of those youth's participation, and then we need to take into consideration maybe like their parental unit, or so maybe we can put that on the agenda for, again, June 11th at 6 p.m., just so that we can maybe try to figure out if there's going to need to be any additional travel and training associated with that. And if there's not, that's fine too, but I'd just like for us to talk about it a little bit more.
Happy to talk about it, Commissioner Baxter, but to answer the question, or just to give you a little bit of feedback, I'm happy to talk about it more, but not quite ready for that because I have to get more. They're going to send me an email to send to you guys, and we can talk about it more. So I just wanted to let you know about that.
So bring it back after June 11th? That what you're saying? Bring it back for regular session?
That'll be August almost.
July?
There's no regular meeting in July, sir. It'll be August.
We can have a meeting.
Okay. Sounds good.
Whenever.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
As soon as I get more information, I'll send it to you, and we can
figure out
we'll figure out.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Commissioner Baxter?
So coming up in the not too distant future is our super fantastic 5,000 Juneteenth celebration that is not only going to encompass one day this year, but 2 days. And I have been so excited to hear how the Juneteenth committee has been working so hard to bring some fantastic content, a lot of wonderful activities, and some fabulous education and presentations. And so the event is going to span Friday, June 14th from 6 to 9, and then June 15th from 11 to 3. And so I'm hoping that we'll have a fantastic turnout. In addition, I would like to just mirror Commissioner Davis's congratulations to all of the graduates of 2024, all of the kindergarten graduates, all of the elementary school graduates, all of the middle school graduates, and then all of the kids that are heading out, and some of them to the newly built Wake Tech facility, which is absolutely exciting, and I feel so blessed that we have that opportunity for our youth. Moving forward into budget cycles in the future, I would like for us as a community to really decide what our priorities are I hear a lot of comments about we need more youth activities, and I think that it is totally fair for us to go before the Wake County Board of Commissioners and ask them for help. That is something that we have not done in the past, but if Carrie can get help building gigantic wooden cardinals, I think that Zebulon can get some help building a youth center, a teen facility that will help engage our youth in a myriad of different ways that will keep them out of trouble and continually learning. In addition, we have not been able to take advantage of the federal appropriations cycle this year. And so I am going to challenge not only our staff and not only my fellow commissioners, but also some of the folks in our surrounding communities to have us get together, have some meaningful conversations to how we can leverage a multi-municipality appropriations request to do some things out here in Wake County that are being done in every other municipality throughout Wake County, but sometimes because we've been so small for so long, we've been kind of forgotten about. And I think that we can have a good chance at getting some funding coming our way to help pay for some of these projects that we are super passionate about, but we're never going to get the money unless we ask. And so I'm hoping that we can put together some meaningful requests for the future. Everyone, wear your sunscreen, or a hat or long sleeve shirts. We don't want to have to call Chief Perry to put out fires on our foreheads. And I just know this now, I probably will be calling you just for that reason when I forget. But take care of your skin, it's important. Skin cancer is extremely, extremely nefarious. And I want us all to be able to give budget comments for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Commissioner Miles?
I'd just like to thank all that came out tonight and participated in the budget process. Thank you all. Unity through community.
Thank you. Guess I'll ditto that. I've always said, it's your money. You need to know how it's spent. We're here because you put us here to spend your money. So I appreciate all of the comments. Just found out the Chris Tuggle, the director of the Boys and Girls Club, his last day will be the Friday the 21st.
Unacceptable. I do not accept his resignation.
He has been a great director for the Boys and Girls Club for probably one of the longest directors that we've had, but he's moving on to Fuquay to teach school. We wish him well, but
good luck, Chris.
He has had a positive impact on our Boys and Girls Club and our youth in the community. So I'd just like to say thank you for your commitment.
Can I add on that real fast, Bill?
Go ahead.
The same thing you're just saying. June 12th, they will be having a going away for him, and the community is invited to come out and celebrate all he's done for our community, for our youth.
5:30.
Yes, sir, 5:30.
At the Boys and Girls Club. That concludes the board's comments. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll recognize Michael Clark for a development update and then recognize Bobby Fitz for some budget transfers.
Good evening once again, Mayor, members of the board. Kind of a short list tonight. 24/7 Fitness. has formally rescinded their application request for their conditional rezoning. They're still looking at the possibilities of relocating to other existing facilities and structures within the town, but they will not be pursuing anything at this or that particular site at this time. Tractor Supply has been granted early grading permit. You may already see active construction going on. They're finalizing some of their final details with Corpud and NCDOT. 901 Mac Todd Road will be coming before you at next Monday's joint public hearing. Once again, this is a replacement of the former bungalow court for a townhome residential project. Over the past couple of weeks, we've had a couple TIA, or Transportation Impact Assessment meetings, or scoping meetings regarding two possible developments, one north of Pierce's Landing, another one at the Bennett Bun Plantation. We have also received notification, formal notification that 110 North Arundel in downtown has been officially sold to to John Muter Construction. And finally, I note that there's a question regarding the earmark funding that was granted from Deborah Ross's office for public transportation. That fund is actually goes to Wake Transit. And we were working collaboratively with them and met with them earlier today regarding an expansion of the ZWX Express route, which will include multiple stops, including potentially one across here from Town Hall, one in close proximity to downtown near Gannon and Arundel, as well as a location at the Walmart, and then moving the location from where it is currently to someplace between Pony Road and Mac Todd Road on Gannon Avenue. That is all I have for the development update, but I'm available if you have any questions.
Any questions, comments?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just got one more last round of transfers before the end of the year to clean up some holes. Finance moved $2,000 from insurance and bonds to contract services, Wake County tax collections. Moved $10,000 to retiree insurance, $2,100 of that from salaries, $3,100 from group insurance, $4,100 from print and copying, and $700 from professional services. Public Works Property Management moved $2,000 to Public Works Maintenance Shop Roof from the Parks and Rec Maintenance Building Roof. Moved $10,000 to Police HVAC, $4,500 from Generator, $1,190 from Light Tower, $690 from Mowers, and $3,700 from the Parks and Rec Maintenance Building Roof. Moved $10,000 from salaries, $3,000 to the building maintenance, $2,000 ZMC, and $5,000 buildings and grounds. And operations moved $2,500 from part-time salaries to salaries overtime. And that's all. Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
Quick question, is that the 10,000 on top of the 400-some thousand we already approved, Bobby? Is that for police station HVAC? Is that in addition to, or how does that?
In addition to, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Hmm?
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes the manager's report.
Thank you. We have a request from Commissioner Baxter to go into closed session to discuss.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
personnel matters. Can we have a small recess beforehand, please?
Sure.
All right, wonderful.
5-minute recess.